You are listening to Partynerdz Radio.
What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmasterfaqs, and this is another Partynerdz exclusive. So upon hearing the Suicide Squad announcement, probably around the end of 2020, you came to realize that James Gunn was putting together like a crazy ass cast. Like it seemed like it was around like 18 actors. So first thoughts that went to head was pretty much that was like going to be like some type of Ocean's 11 type deal. We were going to introduce all these characters. None of them have ever been seen in a comic book movie. A lot of them are pretty obscure as far as comic book movies are concerned. And we're just going to have a fun time with it. Kind of like how he did with Guardians of the Galaxy. Wrong. Because what he did was introduce a lot of characters that a lot of people did not see, a lot of characters that were not introduced in comic book movies, but he was going to kill half them motherfuckers in the first 10 minutes. I mean, it's rare to see, but it's almost good that we got to see the characters for who they are, some of their abilities, exactly like who they might have been in the comic books, because there's a lot of comic book characters, a lot of villains that didn't necessarily catch that type of popularity. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they pretty much disappeared. So I'm pretty sure that James Gunn, the rest of the squad over at DC, were pretty much scrolling through back issues of DC Comics, looking for the weirdest of the weird as far as the villains are concerned, with Mongal, Javelin, Blackguard, Weasel, Savant. Savant was like introduced in a Birds of Prey comic maybe around like, I'm going to say 2003. So maybe around like almost 20 years ago. It pretty much got us into the introduction of the Suicide Squad as to who they are. Pretty much the Expendables in comic book form. So when we get down to it, it's funny how it's actually pretty cool how they played with the fact that where they told a story from two point of views. They did that maybe around like 3 times in this movie. So when we first get our first introduction into this film, of course we see a random group of comic book characters storming a beach on a foreign island in the middle of nowhere and getting obliterated. You know what I'm saying? So Harley Quinn and Rick Flag, of course, we know them from the last Suicide Squad. Harley has went on to do like 4 other movies aside from that, because she is pretty much a standpoint as far as the one popular character within the Suicide Squad who happens to be in, the one that you want to keep around. Lord knows they were not going to kill Margot Robbie. But essentially, it worked out in their favor because the story wasn't supposed to be told by the characters that you saw first storming the island. The second point of view, when we got to the other end of the island, that's when you saw the title screen for Suicide Squad, because it was going to be based strictly off of those characters, namely King Shark, Bloodsport, Polka Dot Man, Ratcatcher 2, Harley, Rick Flag, Peacemaker. So they pretty much, of course, we're going into Amanda Waller's the dark side of the American government, diabolical in her own trade, pretty much picking her poison of who she wants to get out of jail in order to formulate these type of missions. So you get the introductions of Bloodsport. And note, when they introduced Bloodsport and the fact of why he was in jail, the fact that he put Superman in the ICU by shooting him with a kryptonite bullet, that shit is comic book canon. That really did happen. Okay, so Bloodsport, now they gave him a little bit more aesthetically like dope ass uniform, but back in the day when he had just a red bandana and he looked like a mercenary out on the hunt, this is what he did. He is a carbon copy of probably Peacemaker. Peacemaker, of course, makes his money off the American government and just does anything for liberty and freedom, whereas Bloodsport is a mercenary making his way for money. Ratcatcher 2, of course, not necessarily a carbon copy of anybody not named after that. She is just pretty much the daughter of Ratcatcher. And King Shark, of course, he was there for comic relief. As much as anybody saw from those trailers and everything like that, and saw how maybe cute and dumb he was going to be on screen, that appealed to the audience. I mean, even though most of his scenes were silly, cute, and dumb, in that aspect. Peacemaker and Bloodsport are just they're carbon copies of each other, you know. And then we get into the sequences of them storming this foreign island, which the American government has been hiding a government project called Project Starfish, which we do get our introduction to Starro the Conqueror in a large tower called Jotunheim, and the Thinker is pretty much his caregiver for the past 20, 30 years. Lord knows how long he's been doing it. But essentially, that's the main objective. The main objective for Amanda Waller is the fact that they want to keep this under play because the whole island has gone through a military coup, and they don't want their military utilizing American projects that were done on that island, who probably got like a written handshake deal or whatever with diplomacy facts and money, in order for them not to get Starro used as some type of weapon for their own disposal. So when you get into this movie, you kind of realize that James Gunn is pretty much pulling the same characters that he's done from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies to Suicide Squad. And it's pretty simple to do that, you know what I'm saying? Because when you look at it, there's a lot of directors. Quentin Tarantino does it. Spike Lee does it. Martin Scorsese does it. They kind of use the same actors because they know what they'll give them. So Michael Rooker be involved. I saw Pom Clemente, who was otherwise known as Manus from Guardians of the Galaxy. She was in the bar. The introduction for the strip joint. You know what I'm saying? His brother is always playing a part in a lot of his movies. Sylvester Stallone was Darkhawk in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And he was King Shark in this movie. The whole ploy as to them introducing a character like Starro, which in layman's terms, the guy was writing the movie. He called it a kaiju. He's an interdimensional being who generally just floats around in space, but those little entities of himself that he applies to everybody's heads in order to make them walk around like slaves, that's pretty much his MO. He can psychologically change you and move you at his moments as almost like an extension of himself if he applies those little ass fucking starfish to your head. And he makes you into his own little minions. In the comics, you could remove the starfish. In this one, you take the starfish off and it's pretty much ripped your skin open, which is the rated R factor of this thing, which made it that much more beautiful. Okay? But to get down to it, the end of this movie, when you saw the breakdown between Polka Dot Man, Bloodsport, King Shark, and Harley Quinn battling Starro and Ratcatcher, you noticed that Bloodsport gave his own little Captain America nod to King Shark, basically telling him that monster is Nom Nom, almost in the same manner that Steve Rogers told Hulk to smash in the first Avengers movie. If you did a side-by-side take on that, that shit looks exactly the same. So Marvel still adds an effect as far as how superhero movies go when it comes to that aspect, even though this is a great DC film. The killing of Starro, that I didn't agree with. I don't necessarily agree with killing villains. I do want the villains to live on and do more diabolical things or learn from their mistakes and do more crazy ass shit. But overall, it was a dope ass movie. DC, eventually, they will get it down to where if they're doing rated R flicks or one shots in this effect and they're not doing a connective universe, you're going to get a guy like James Gunn, who's done an obscure movie for Marvel, who's now done an obscure, weird movie for you. He has his own little formula of taking those type of characters and making them his own, and then putting them on screen and making dope content out of it. Now, people were talking about like, yo, give him the reins for DC. That's all well and good, but you got to give him a character that he will like. So if I had my own little wish list for James Gunn, it would be Lobo. Lobo would be a character in mind in a rated R faction that he could translate well with. It's not like saying, oh, give James Gunn Green Lantern, Batman, Superman, or Wonder Woman. Don't give him any of that, because those characters aren't their atypical morals and values and everything like that. You got to give him weird, something gory, somebody a little more out of pocket. But overall, the movie is a success. It's doing heavily well as far as the critics is concerned. I know there's a lot of motherfuckers within like Snyder loyalists that are downsizing the movie just because they want to. Even though James Gunn has said that they've been very supportive of him making this movie and doing it in his own sort of fashion. So he doesn't see anything wrong with it. I don't see anything wrong with it. And I think DC basically got the hint that they can do more movies with him like this in the future. But feel free to hit us up, Party Nerds, on IG and Twitter and Facebook. Feel free to hit us up, hit the like, subscribe, comment to this video. Let us know what you think of Suicide Squad, because overall, we thought it was dope. Peace.
Party nerds, 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 party nerds.